The church must be a true home of the soul. Read with me in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 to 7. These commands that I give to you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. This verse is a continuation of Moses' speech to the Israelites on the border of the Promised Land. His speech is filled with warnings and commands that ultimately are difficult to follow. And what a difficult thing to wrestle with, let alone to follow. How is Israel supposed to obey these commands? And God's simple answer is to remember. Remember God's love. Israel was chosen for no other reason than the fact that God loved them. Love is the center of the law. And this is best summed up when we find one of the most important laws of them all, the Shema. And it goes something like this. Maybe you might remember it. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. Now, Jesus amplifies this in the New Testament when asked what is the greatest commandment. And it echoes the Shema. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And this is the basis of our obedience to God, that God's love is the force that motivates us to obey every other law. And as writers of the Spoken Gospel writes, loving God does not make our obedience to other commands unnecessary, it makes our obedience possible. I pray that the church becomes a place that reflects this amazing principle to love God and His people. Christ's love was an action that took Him all the way to the cross. So when we are called to fulfill the Great Commission and to follow Christ's commands, we are able to because He first loved us. And I pray that our church becomes a home that puts the love of Christ into action. That God's grace reminds us to be gracious to others, to forgive because Christ forgave us, to show compassion through suffering because Christ was a great example of that, and to effectively create a hospitable environment where all ages, races, and conditions are welcome to worship God. A church that places Christ at the center and His followers are deeply cared for simply because of His sacrifice.